There are places that look beautiful, and then there are places that look flawless. Places where 72 waterfalls drop into a glacial valley without a single piece of litter on the ground. Where a pyramid-shaped mountain rises 4,478 meters into the sky above a town with no cars. Where lakes reflect the Alps like perfect mirrors and trains arrive not within the hour, but within 3 minutes of schedule, 94.1% of the time. Switzerland is one of those places, a country where trains run to the second, where cities feel impossibly clean, where everything just works. When travelers step off the train in Switzerland, they see this perfection everywhere, but they don't see what's hiding behind it. Around 60% of this country is just steep mountains, sharp rocks that shoot into the sky, places where snow crashes down without warning, deep valleys that once trapped people like natural prisons. For hundreds of years, going from one valley to another wasn't just hard, it was deadly. Winter snow buried entire roads. Villages were cut off for months. Yet today, when visitors ride through these mountains, they're traveling on one of the best systems on Earth. This country refused to accept nature's limits. Workers spent 17 years digging through solid rock. But as travelers will discover, this perfection comes at a hidden cost. Before Switzerland became one of the most efficient countries in the world, it was something else entirely, a land that resisted everything. When travelers look at Switzerland today, they see perfect connections and smooth journeys. But they're traveling through a landscape that was never meant to be connected. The Swiss Alps dominate over 60% of the country, vast, steep, and unforgiving. These aren't gentle hills that roll into each other. These are towering peaks that cut through the land like giant stone knives. They divide regions into isolated pockets, each one trapped behind walls of rock and ice. For centuries, moving from one valley to another wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous. Take the Furka Pass, sitting at 2,429 meters above sea level. Even today, travelers can see how winter snow buries this road completely. Cars disappear under meters of white. The pass becomes invisible, and entire communities get cut off for months at a time. This happens every single year. The mountains don't care about human plans or human schedules. Winter didn't just slow life down in these valleys, it stopped it completely. Snow buried the roads so deep that people couldn't dig them out. Passes disappeared under walls of ice. Travel slowed to a crawl, then ceased altogether. Entire villages were sealed off from the outside world, left to survive on whatever food they had stored before the snow arrived. Children grew up without ever seeing the next valley over. This wasn't a place designed for connection. It was a place built for separation. And for generations, that's exactly what it was. A collection of isolated valleys, each one living on its own time, in its own world. People developed different dialects just 20 kilometers apart, different customs, different ways of life, because the mountains made sure they rarely met. Even today, when modern equipment and weather forecasting make travel safer, dozens of fatal mountaineering accidents happen every year in the Swiss Alps. Avalanches that move faster than cars, sudden weather that changes from clear skies to deadly storms in minutes, sheer falls where one wrong step means death. The terrain is so challenging that certain routes remain impassable for half the year. The Jungfrau region alone with peaks over 4,000 meters, was considered one of the most dangerous and unreachable areas in Europe. For centuries, this geography wasn't just an obstacle. It was a wall, a natural barrier that kept Switzerland fragmented, divided, and disconnected. But instead of accepting this reality, something unusual began to happen. Swiss engineers didn't look at the mountains and think, "We can't cross them." They looked at them and thought, "What if we go through them?" It wasn't a sudden decision. It was a slow realization, born from necessity and shaped by ambition, that isolation was no longer acceptable. And once that idea took root, everything began to change. Because the land that once divided Switzerland was about to be reshaped, not around the mountains, not over them, but straight through the rock itself. And what came next would rewrite the geography of an entire nation. Most countries adapt to their geography. They build roads where the land allows them. They settle in valleys where it's safe. They accept the limits nature gives them. But Switzerland did the opposite. It declared war on its own landscape. And when travelers ride through Switzerland today, they're traveling through the results of that war. The first real breakthrough came in the form of mountain railways, engineering marvels that tunneled through peaks most people thought were untouchable. The Jungfrau Railway, completed in the early 1900s, shows visitors exactly what this looked like. This railway tunneled 9.3 kilometers through the Eiger and Mönch mountains. It climbs from 2,061 meters to the Jungfraujoch station at 3,454 meters. They call it the top of Europe. This wasn't just about building a railway, it was about engineering one of the most efficient mountain transport systems in the world. When tourists ride this train today, they're experiencing precision engineering that was revolutionary for its time. Every meter of tunnel was calculated. Every spiral inside the mountain was designed to gain elevation gradually. This wasn't random construction. It was systematic planning that would become Switzerland's signature. The extreme geography that once divided Switzerland was being reshaped through engineering. Workers died building these tunnels. Machinery failed in the freezing cold. Progress was measured in meters, not miles, but they kept going because they were creating something that had never existed before. Efficient mountain transportation. The Jungfrau Railway took 16 years to complete. Engineers had to create new techniques just to make it work. They built spiral tunnels inside the mountain to gain elevation gradually. When travelers experience this today, they're feeling what those early engineers designed: a smooth ride through solid rock. Precision that makes the impossible feel effortless. This railway became a symbol of Swiss engineering, not just building things, but building them to work perfectly. Around the same time, other railways began snaking through valleys, over stone bridges like the famous Landwasser Bridge, and across gorges that seemed uncrossable. When visitors cross the Landwasser Bridge today, they see precision in stone. Every arch calculated for maximum efficiency. Every support beam placed exactly where it needs to be. This bridge represents the engineering mindset that would shape everything Switzerland built afterward. Track by track, tunnel by tunnel, bridge by bridge, Switzerland was stitching itself together. Villages that had been isolated for centuries were suddenly connected. People could visit the next valley over for the first time in their lives. Trade could flow between regions efficiently. Communication improved. The country was becoming unified through engineering. But these early railways were only the beginning. They connected small regions, yes, but they didn't solve the larger problem. The Alps still split the country in half. North and south were still separated by massive mountain ranges. If Switzerland wanted to truly connect, to become one unified nation with the most efficient transport system possible, it needed something bigger. Something that would prove Swiss engineering could overcome any geographical challenge. Something that would create the efficient connections that make modern Switzerland work so perfectly. And that's exactly what they decided to build. A tunnel so long, so deep, and so precisely engineered that it would take nearly 2 decades to complete. But when it opened, it would change everything. The question was, could they actually pull it off? By the late 20th century, Switzerland had proven it could tunnel through mountains. Those early railways showed that Swiss engineers could carve through rock and connect isolated valleys. But the real challenge remained, connecting north and south in a way that could handle modern speed, modern weight, and modern demand. The Alps still acted like a giant wall, splitting the country in half. If travelers wanted to cross from one side to the other, they had to take slow, winding routes over mountain passes that closed every winter. The answer was the Gotthard-based tunnel, a 57.09-kilometer rail tunnel running deep beneath the St. Gotthard Massif. When it opened in 2016, it became the world's longest and deepest traffic tunnel, running up to 2,300 meters below the surface. When modern travelers ride through this tunnel today, they're experiencing something that reshaped Switzerland's geography completely. This wasn't just infrastructure. This wasn't just another railway project. This was a statement. For 17 years, workers drilled through solid rock. They removed more than 28 million cubic meters of stone. That's enough rock to fill multiple football stadiums. Think about that. Imagine moving an entire mountain, piece by piece, just to create a flat corridor underneath it. The heat inside the tunnel reached over 40 degrees Celsius. Workers were drilling in temperatures that felt like a desert, but underground, in complete darkness. The pressure was immense. The risk was constant. And yet, they kept going. Because this tunnel wasn't just about trains, it was about proving that no mountain, no matter how massive, could keep Switzerland divided. It was about control and connection and refusing to accept the limits that nature had given them. Every day for 17 years, workers went underground and carved away Switzerland's biggest obstacle. They were literally rewriting the geography of their country. The Gotthard-based tunnel provides something that changed everything. A flat, low-gradient corridor that allows passenger trains to travel at speeds up to 200 kilometers per hour. Freight trains can now haul heavier loads than ever before. When travelers take the train from Zurich to Milan today, they experience something their grandparents never could. A smooth ride that cuts travel time by roughly an hour. Switzerland became the critical transit route between Germany and Italy, not because of its geography, but because it conquered its geography. The tunnel alone cost billions of francs and required cutting-edge technology. Real-time monitoring systems track every train that passes through. Advanced ventilation manages heat and air pressure deep underground. This isn't just a hole through a mountain. It's a precisely engineered system that works perfectly every day. When visitors ride through today, they're experiencing Swiss precision at its most extreme. But here's the twist that changed everything about Switzerland's approach to perfection. The tunnel wasn't just an engineering feat. It was a psychological shift. Because once you've drilled through 57 kilometers of mountain, once you've proven that geography can be rewritten, you start to believe that anything can be controlled. And that belief, that mindset, began to spread beyond the tunnels. It started shaping how Switzerland built its cities, how it ran its systems, how it organized its entire society. The same engineers who calculated exactly how to drill through solid rock started applying that same precision to everything else. Train schedules, urban planning, even daily behavior. The control that conquered the Alps became the control that shaped modern Swiss life. Travelers today see the results everywhere. Trains that arrive exactly on time. Cities that work like clockwork. Systems so efficient they feel almost automatic. All of it traces back to this moment when Switzerland proved that the impossible was just a matter of engineering and determination. Because once the mountains were no longer a barrier, once geography was no longer an excuse, the real question became, what else could be perfected? And that's when Switzerland turned its attention to something even more complex than rock and stone. Something that affects every traveler, every resident, every moment of Swiss life. It turned to time itself. With the tunnels complete and the mountains conquered, Switzerland now had the physical infrastructure to connect. But infrastructure alone doesn't create precision. It creates potential. The next step was turning that potential into a system. A machine so finely tuned that delays are measured in seconds, not minutes. When travelers experience Switzerland today, they're not just riding trains. They're experiencing the most precise transportation system on Earth. Today, Switzerland operates over 5,200 kilometers of rail track, one of the densest networks in the world. But density isn't what makes it special. Precision is. Trains are scheduled using something called symmetrical timetables. This means many services leave at the same minute every hour. Travelers can memorize the rhythm. The 8:47 train to Zurich doesn't just leave at 8:47 today, it leaves at 8:47 every day. Same platform, same time, same connection. This creates something that visitors notice immediately, a predictable rhythm that the entire country moves to. When tourists arrive at Swiss train stations, they don't see chaos. They don't see crowds running to catch trains. They see people calmly walking to platforms because they know exactly when their train will arrive. The system has taught people to trust it completely. Imagine a country where you don't need to check the time because you already know when the train leaves, where connections are so reliable that missing one feels shocking, where the entire nation moves to the same invisible beat. That's what Switzerland built, not by accident, not by luck, but through obsessive planning, constant maintenance, and a shared belief that punctuality isn't optional. It's essential. The numbers prove this works. In 2025, 94.1% of Swiss trains arrived within 3 minutes of their scheduled time, and 98.6% of connections were made successfully. Think about what that means for travelers. Almost every time they plan to catch a connecting train, it works. Swiss residents travel an average of 2,500 kilometers by train per person per year. That's more than almost any other nation. They trust the system so completely that they build their entire lives around it. The Swiss Travel Pass shows how this precision extends everywhere. One ticket works across trains, trams, buses, and boats nationwide. Travelers don't need to understand different systems or buy separate tickets. Everything connects. Everything works together. The entire system is electrified, monitored in real time, and maintained around the clock by thousands of engineers, signalmen, and technicians. When visitors ride Swiss trains today, they're experiencing constant maintenance happening invisibly around them. Every night, workers check tracks. Every week they test signals. Every month they update systems. The machine never sleeps because Swiss precision demands that nothing breaks down, nothing fails, nothing disappoints the millions of people who depend on it every day. But here's what's remarkable about Switzerland's transformation. This precision didn't stay confined to the railways. It spread into the cities, into businesses, into daily life. Because when trains run on time, people start arriving on time. When systems are predictable, behavior becomes predictable. When everything around you works perfectly, you start expecting perfection from yourself too. Over time, punctuality stopped being a rule enforced by the system. It became a value internalized by the people. Swiss workers arrive at meetings exactly on time. Swiss students show up to class when they're supposed to. Swiss businesses open and close at their posted hours. The machine didn't just move Switzerland, it shaped the Swiss. Travelers notice this immediately when they visit Swiss cities. Restaurants that say they open at 6 p.m. open at 6 p.m. Shops that close at 7 p.m. close at 7 p.m. Appointments start when they're scheduled to start. The reliability of the trains created a culture of reliability in everything else. This is how engineering becomes culture, how systems shape behavior, how precision in infrastructure creates precision in life. Switzerland didn't just build efficient transportation, it built an efficient society. And that efficiency touches every traveler who experiences this country. And nowhere is that precision more visible than in one tiny industry. An industry that doesn't move mountains or drill tunnels, but it does something even harder. It measures time down to the microsecond. And it taught Switzerland to see perfection not as a goal, but as a standard. Connection alone wasn't enough, because once everything is connected, something else becomes possible. Control. And in Switzerland, control isn't enforced from the top down. It's built into the system itself. When travelers experience Swiss trains today, they're experiencing control that feels effortless. Train schedules are timed with extraordinary precision. Delays are rare, and when they happen, they're measured in seconds. Stations operate like synchronized clocks. Every arrival, every departure, every connection, carefully aligned. Travelers notice this immediately when they step off their first Swiss train. Everything flows, everything connects, everything works exactly as promised. And this mindset doesn't stop at transportation. It extends into everything Swiss engineering touches. There's something almost hypnotic about watching a Swiss train station during rush hour. Trains glide in and out with mechanical grace. Passengers move without hesitation because they know, down to the minute, where they need to be. No one rushes, no one panics, because the system has earned their trust. And that trust creates a kind of calm that's rare in the modern world. Travelers feel this calm immediately when they arrive in Switzerland. A sense that everything is under control, that chaos has been engineered out of existence. This isn't accident. This is precision becoming culture, systems becoming behavior, engineering becoming identity. The watchmaking industry shows how this precision extends beyond transportation. One of Switzerland's most iconic exports is built on this same philosophy. In towns like La Chaux-de-Fonds, streets were designed on a grid to maximize daylight for watch workshops. When visitors walk through these towns today, they're seeing urban planning designed around precision. Swiss mechanical watches are built around components machined to tolerances of micrometers. Parts so small and precise that assembling them requires magnification and steady hands. Workers spend years learning to handle pieces that are smaller than grains of sand. These watches don't just tell time, they represent an idea. That time itself can be measured perfectly. And that idea became a metaphor for the entire country. When travelers buy Swiss watches, they're buying precision that extends far beyond timekeeping. They're buying a philosophy that says perfection is possible, that control can be absolute, that systems can work without failure. Every Swiss watch carries this promise, and Switzerland built its entire reputation around delivering on that promise. But precision isn't just about machines, it's about mindset. Over time, Swiss society began to mirror the systems it built. In cities like Zurich, Bern, and Basel, strict zoning laws, carefully planned public transport, and codified rules for everything, from recycling to quiet hours, created an environment where order feels natural. Travelers notice this immediately when they visit Swiss cities. Public spaces are kept clean, not because of constant monitoring, but because people maintain them. Arriving on time isn't enforced, it's expected. And that expectation shapes behavior in ways no law ever could. Swiss workers arrive at meetings exactly when scheduled. Swiss businesses open and close at their posted hours. Swiss residents follow rules because the rules make the system work better for everyone. This creates something that visitors experience as almost magical. A society where things work not because people are forced to make them work, but because people want them to work. Where precision isn't a burden imposed from outside, but a value shared from within. Where efficiency feels natural because the entire culture has been shaped around efficiency. The same engineering mindset that carved tunnels through mountains created social systems that work with the same precision. The same attention to detail that makes trains run on time makes cities function smoothly. The same commitment to perfection that creates Swiss watches creates Swiss society. When travelers experience Switzerland today, they're experiencing a country where precision became cultural, where order became identity, where systems became values, where engineering achievements shaped not just infrastructure, but behavior. Because when precision becomes cultural, when it's not just built into infrastructure, but woven into identity, something remarkable happens. The system stops being something you use. It becomes something you are. And that transformation turned Switzerland into something far more powerful than just a well-connected country. It turned it into a global hub. And when systems work this well, something else begins to happen. Everything accelerates. People move faster. Goods travel further. Information flows freely. And with that, opportunity grows. Switzerland, once divided by its own landscape, became one of the most connected places in Europe. Not just internally, but globally. When travelers arrive in Switzerland today, they're entering a country that the world depends on. At the center of it all are cities like Zurich and Geneva, financial hubs, global meeting points, gateways to international trade. When business travelers land at Zurich Airport, they're stepping into one of the most important economic centers on Earth. When diplomats arrive in Geneva, they're entering a city that hosts some of the world's most powerful organizations. There's a reason the world trusts Switzerland. It's not just the neutrality, it's not just the mountains or the scenery, it's the reliability. When you can move goods from Germany to Italy without delay, when you can host international conferences without infrastructure failures, when you can offer financial services with absolute precision, trust follows. And trust in the global economy is everything. Switzerland didn't just build a system that worked. It built a system the world could depend on. Banks knew their transactions would process perfectly. Companies knew their goods would move on schedule. Governments knew their meetings would happen without technical problems. This reliability became Switzerland's greatest export. Zurich grew into a global banking and insurance center, managing trillions in assets. When financial professionals around the world need to move money, store wealth, or make investments, they trust Zurich's systems, not because Swiss banks are the biggest, but because they're the most reliable. The same precision that makes trains run on time makes financial transactions work perfectly. Geneva became home to the European headquarters of the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, the International Red Cross, and dozens of other NGOs. These organizations didn't choose Switzerland for its mountains or its scenery. They chose it for its stability, its reliability, and its infrastructure. When the rest of Europe faced delays and disruptions, Switzerland kept running. When diplomats from around the world gather in Geneva for important meetings, they know the technology will work. The transportation will be on time. The hotels will be ready. The conference facilities will function perfectly. This consistency made Switzerland irreplaceable in international affairs. Countries that couldn't agree on anything could agree to meet in Switzerland because they trusted the systems. The Zurich airport shows how this global connection works in practice. Travelers can fly from Zurich to almost anywhere in the world with smooth connections. Cargo planes carry Swiss goods to every continent. Business people arrive knowing they can depend on the infrastructure to support their work. The airport itself runs with the same precision as Swiss trains. But here's the paradox that changed everything about how the world sees Switzerland. Switzerland's location was once seen as a disadvantage, landlocked, mountainous, divided by language and geography, cut off from the sea, surrounded by larger, more powerful countries. But once the internal system was perfected, that same location became an advantage. Sitting at the heart of Europe's north-south and east-west corridors, Switzerland became a logistics bridge, a financial nexus, a place where the world meets, because the world knows it will work. Goods flowing from Northern Europe to Southern Europe pass through Switzerland. Money moving between global markets flows through Swiss banks. Decisions affecting the entire world get made in Swiss conference rooms. Travelers today experience this global connection everywhere they go in Switzerland. International businesses with offices in Swiss cities, global brands that chose Switzerland as their European headquarters, world leaders arriving for meetings that will affect millions of people. Switzerland became the place where the world works. But global influence brings global pressure. Because when millions of people start arriving, when tourism becomes one of your largest industries, your system gets tested like never before. And that's exactly what happened. The machine that conquered mountains and perfected precision now faced its biggest challenge yet. The question was, could Switzerland's system handle the flood? In 2023, something remarkable happened to Switzerland's perfectly tuned system. Foreign overnight stays in Swiss hotels rose 21.8% year-on-year, reaching 20.9 million, nearly matching pre-COVID peaks. Regions like Zurich saw overnight stays jump over 17%. When travelers started flooding back into Switzerland, They came in numbers that would have broken most countries' infrastructure. Lauterbrunnen's 72 waterfalls became Instagram famous. Millions of photos shared around the world. The Matterhorn's car-free village of Zermatt saw record visitor numbers. Lake Lucerne's mirror-like surface appeared in millions of social media posts. Switzerland became one of the world's most photographed destinations. And through it all, Switzerland's rail and accommodation systems handled the load without the meltdowns seen in Venice, Barcelona, or Santorini. Tourism is the ultimate stress test. It reveals whether a system is truly strong or just looks strong from the outside. When millions of people arrive who don't know the rules, who don't understand the rhythm, who crowd into spaces designed for locals, most countries' infrastructure starts to crack. Trains get overcrowded, hotels run out of rooms, streets become chaotic, systems break down. But Switzerland passed this test. Trains kept running on time, even with packed cars full of tourists taking photos. Hotels stayed clean, even with record occupancy rates. Streets remained orderly, even with crowds of visitors who had never been there before. Even as millions of people flooded in, the infrastructure didn't buckle. The system absorbed the pressure, adapted, and kept performing exactly as designed. And that only reinforced the perception that travelers take home with them. Switzerland doesn't just work. It works under any condition. It works when it's stressed. It works when it's tested. It works when millions of people who don't understand the system suddenly become part of it. The Swiss Travel Pass became a logistical triumph during this tourism boom. An integrated ticket allowing unlimited travel on trains, buses, trams, and boats. Tourists could move seamlessly across the country without confusion or delay. Even visitors who spoke no German, French, or Italian could navigate Switzerland's transport system perfectly. The engineering that connected the mountains had created something even more impressive, a system so simple that anyone could use it. Real-time apps tracked train arrivals down to the minute. Tourists could plan their days knowing exactly when every train would arrive. Hotel booking systems synced with transport schedules. Visitors could book accommodations and transportation together, knowing everything would connect perfectly. Even in remote alpine villages, far from major cities, the infrastructure held. The precision worked everywhere, and visitors left with the same impression that millions of travelers take home from Switzerland. Everything just works, which of course is exactly what Switzerland wants them to think. The country's reputation as the world's most perfect destination was confirmed by every tourist who experienced that seamless efficiency. But here's what tourists don't see when they're taking photos of waterfalls and riding trains through mountains. The thousands of workers behind the scenes, the signal engineers monitoring tracks 24 hours a day, the cleaning crews working overnight to make sure every station looks perfect in the morning, the timetable planners adjusting schedules in real time when weather or crowds threaten delays, the maintenance teams inspecting tunnels around the clock, the hotel staff working extra shifts during peak tourist season, the transport workers managing crowds that triple during summer months. Perfection isn't passive. It doesn't maintain itself. It's actively maintained every single hour by people who know that even one failure could crack the illusion. And that pressure, that relentless expectation, has consequences that go far beyond infrastructure. Because when perfection becomes your identity, when the world expects flawlessness, when even small mistakes feel catastrophic, the system starts shaping the people inside it. And in Switzerland, that shaping runs deep, deeper than infrastructure, deeper than trains. It reaches into culture, behavior, and identity itself. But systems don't exist on their own. They shape the people who live within them. When travelers visit Switzerland today, they're not just experiencing infrastructure, they're experiencing a culture that was shaped by that infrastructure. In Switzerland, order isn't enforced by police or cameras. It's internalized. People arrive on time, not because they have to, but because it's expected. Public spaces are clean, not because they're constantly monitored, but because people maintain them. Even daily life follows a rhythm. Quiet, predictable, structured. From small towns to major cities, there's a sense that everything has its place, and everything happens when it should. Travelers notice this immediately when they walk through Swiss neighborhoods. No litter on the streets, no noise after certain hours, no chaos in public spaces. This isn't authoritarian control. This is cultural agreement. There's a German word for it, Ordnung, order, and a companion word, Zuverlässigkeit, reliability. These aren't just values that Swiss people talk about. They're identities. They're part of who Swiss people are. When visitors see Swiss residents sorting their waste into multiple bins, they're seeing people who do this not because of fines, but because that's what you do. It's part of being Swiss. Swiss people respect quiet hours not out of fear, but out of shared understanding. Arriving late or making a public mess draws social disapproval, not because of laws, but because the baseline of behavior is so tightly aligned with the system's demands. The culture doesn't resist the machine, it mirrors it. People became part of the precision they lived within. On the Swiss plateau, about 30% of the territory where most people live, cities like Zurich, Bern, Basel, and Lucerne show how this precision plays out at human scale. Strict zoning laws govern where you can build and how. Public transport is carefully planned down to the minute. Recycling rules are codified and followed religiously. Travelers see this organization everywhere they go. There's even a cultural expectation around noise. After 10 p.m., you don't vacuum, you don't drill, you don't disrupt your neighbors. Visitors staying in Swiss apartments or hotels experience this quiet immediately. The silence after 10 p.m. isn't enforced by police. It's maintained by people who understand that everyone benefits when everyone follows the same rules. This agreement holds the system together. Swiss workers arrive at jobs exactly on time. Swiss students show up to classes when scheduled. Swiss businesses open and close at their posted hours. Meetings start when they're supposed to start. Appointments happen when they're planned. The reliability of the infrastructure created reliability in human behavior. But here's the twist that explains how Switzerland became what it is today. This culture didn't create the system. The system created the culture. Decades of reliable trains taught people to value punctuality. Clean streets reinforced the habit of cleanliness. Predictable infrastructure made unpredictability feel wrong. When everything around you works perfectly, you start expecting perfection from yourself and others. Over time, the Swiss didn't just live in a perfect system, they became part of it. Precision stopped being something outside them that they used. It became something inside them that they were. Engineers who build tunnels through mountains expect the same precision from themselves that they build into their projects. Workers who maintain trains that arrive on time maintain their own lives with the same discipline. Perfection became woven into identity. Swiss people don't just use efficient systems, they are efficient people. They don't just ride punctual trains, they are punctual people. The engineering mindset that conquered the Alps became the cultural mindset that defines Swiss behavior. Travelers experience this cultural precision everywhere they go in Switzerland. Shopkeepers who open exactly when they say they will. Restaurant servers who work with quiet efficiency. Hotel staff who maintain spaces to perfect standards. The culture of perfection touches every interaction visitors have. And that's when the real cost started to show. Because when you build a system this tight, when expectations run this high, when even small failures feel unacceptable, the pressure doesn't just fall on the infrastructure. It falls on the people. And that pressure has a price. One that's measured not in francs or tunnels, but in something far harder to see. Maintaining perfection requires constant effort. When travelers glide smoothly through Switzerland's tunnels and ride trains that arrive exactly on time, they're experiencing something that never stops working behind the scenes. Behind the smooth train rides and flawless connections are teams working continuously to keep everything running. Tracks need maintenance every single night. Tunnels need monitoring around the clock. Infrastructure needs constant upkeep that most visitors never see. The Gotthard Base Tunnel alone requires 24/7 surveillance. Engineers monitor every train that passes through the 57-kilometer tunnel. Planned shutdowns happen regularly for maintenance that can't be done while trains are running. A small army of engineers works to prevent failures that could shut down Switzerland's most important transport link. The largely electrified rail network demands heavy ongoing investment, new technology, updated signals, constant upgrades, and thousands of workers keep everything running so seamlessly that most people never notice them. Signal engineers monitoring tracks from control centers. Maintenance crews working overnight while the country sleeps. City cleaners making sure every station looks perfect by morning. Timetable planners adjusting schedules in real time when anything threatens the precision. All of this happens invisibly so that travelers can experience perfection. There's an invisible weight to living in a system that never fails. Because when everything works, there's very little room for error. Standards don't drop, expectations stay high, and the pressure to maintain that level of performance day after day, year after year, becomes exhausting. For workers, the demand is relentless. Mistakes that would be acceptable in other countries feel catastrophic in Switzerland. For residents, the social pressure to conform is constant. Arriving late to meetings feels like a personal failure. Making noise after quiet hours draws immediate disapproval. Living in a country where everything works perfectly means you're expected to work perfectly too. And for the country as a whole, the cost of staying perfect is measured not just in money, but in energy, stress, and psychological strain. Switzerland's National Cost of Living Index sits around 112 to 113, compared to an OECD baseline of 100. This makes it one of the most expensive countries on Earth. In central Zurich and Geneva, one-bedroom rents average well over 3,000 Swiss francs a month. Basic groceries cost 500 to 700 francs per person. An inexpensive restaurant meal runs around 27 francs. Local public transport passes, intercity tickets, and mountain rail fares add hundreds of francs a month, even for modest users. When travelers experience Switzerland's efficiency, they're experiencing a system that costs more to live in than almost anywhere else on Earth. Living here isn't just expensive, it's prohibitively so for many people. The precision that makes everything work perfectly comes at a financial cost that shapes every aspect of daily life for residents. And then there's the psychological cost that no tourism brochure mentions. While Switzerland still ranks in the global top 10 of the World Happiness Report, it has slid from first place in 2012 to around 9th to 13th by 2024 to 2025. Perceived freedom and social support scores have softened. Why? Because even in a nearly perfect system, expectations weigh on people. The bar is so high that small failures feel catastrophic. The pressure to conform, to perform, to maintain the illusion of perfection takes a toll. Swiss workers feel pressure to never make mistakes. Swiss residents feel pressure to never break social rules. Swiss businesses feel pressure to never disappoint customers. Perfection isn't just hard to build, it's hard to live inside. Travelers see the results of this pressure in positive ways: exceptional service, reliable systems, beautiful maintained spaces. But residents experience the weight of maintaining those standards every single day. The stress of living in a country where flaws are never allowed to show. The exhaustion of constant vigilance against imperfection. So the question becomes, is it worth it? Is the beauty, the efficiency, the global admiration, is it worth the cost? Not just the financial cost, but the human one, the pressure, the weight, the invisible price of living in a country where flaws are never allowed to show. And that question brings us to the heart of Switzerland's story. But systems like this don't come free. When travelers experience Switzerland's seamless efficiency, they're experiencing something that costs more than most countries' entire infrastructure budgets. Maintaining perfection requires constant effort that never stops. Behind every spotless station, every on-time train, every clean street is a system under enormous pressure. Tracks need endless maintenance that happens while the country sleeps. Tunnels require 24/7 monitoring by engineers who never leave their posts. Infrastructure needs constant upkeep that most visitors never see. The Gotthard-based tunnel alone requires mega-projects just for maintenance. Planned shutdowns happen regularly so workers can inspect every kilometer of that 57-kilometer tunnel. The largely electrified rail network needs heavy ongoing investment, new technology, updated signals, constant upgrades to maintain the precision that travelers expect. And beyond the systems, there's another cost that's harder to measure but impossible to ignore. Living in Switzerland is expensive, one of the highest costs of living in the world. Housing costs that force workers to spend most of their income just to live near their jobs. Food prices that make basic groceries a significant expense. Transportation costs that add up even for people who live within the efficient system. Everything reflects the price of maintaining this level of quality. When travelers pay 27 francs for a simple meal, they're paying for a system that ensures that meal is prepared in a spotless kitchen, served by workers who arrive exactly on time, in a restaurant that maintains Swiss standards of cleanliness and efficiency. The cost of perfection gets passed down to every transaction. Thousands of workers keep this machine running so that visitors can experience seamless rides and spotless streets. Signal engineers monitoring every train movement. Maintenance crews working overnight shifts to repair anything that might cause delays. City cleaners ensuring every public space looks perfect by morning. Timetable planners adjusting schedules in real time when anything threatens the precision. And then there's the pressure that no visitor sees. Because when everything works, there's very little room for failure. Expectations stay high, every single day. Standards don't drop even during difficult periods. And perfection isn't something you reach and then maintain easily. It's something you have to sustain through constant effort, every single day. For workers, that means relentless schedules, train operators who can't be late, engineers who can't make mistakes, service workers who must maintain Swiss standards even when they're tired or stressed. For residents, it means social pressure to conform to a system that demands precision from everyone who lives within it. Arriving late feels like a personal failure. Making noise after quiet hours draws immediate disapproval. And for the country as a whole, it means a system that can never afford to slip. Because the moment it does, the entire illusion cracks. The reputation for perfection that brings tourists and businesses to Switzerland depends on maintaining that perfection without any visible flaws. The pressure is constant, invisible, and exhausting. Psychologically, the bar is so high that even small failures feel unacceptable. Workers who make mistakes feel the weight of disappointing an entire system. Residents who don't conform feel isolated from a society built around shared standards. The pressure to maintain the machine affects everyone who lives within it. From the outside, Switzerland looks like a dream. Clean cities that sparkle in the alpine light, reliable systems that work like clockwork, breathtaking landscapes that look too perfect to be real. A country where everything seems to function exactly as it should. But now, travelers know the truth. Behind that dream is a machine built over centuries, maintained by thousands, and powered by a culture that values order, precision, and control above almost everything else. It's not magic, it's engineering. And it's one of the most remarkable achievements in human history. When visitors experience Switzerland's seamless efficiency, they're experiencing centuries of deliberate choices. Decisions to drill through mountains instead of going around them. Choices to build precision into culture, not just infrastructure. Commitments to maintain perfection, even when the cost becomes almost unbearable. You've just seen how extreme geography shaped Switzerland's development, how tunnels, railways, and precision engineering turned isolation into connection, how a culture of punctuality and order became woven into daily life, how a country that should have been impossible to build became one of the most efficient, reliable, and admired places on Earth. And you've seen the price, the cost of living that makes Switzerland one of the most expensive countries on Earth. The pressure to perform that weighs on every worker, every resident, every system. The invisible weight of maintaining perfection every single day. This is what it takes to build a country that feels flawless. And this is what it costs to keep it that way. If this story opened your eyes to what Switzerland really is, not perfect, but perfectly managed, then hit that subscribe button. Because we're uncovering the hidden systems, the invisible costs, and the untold stories behind the world's most iconic places. From infrastructure to culture, from engineering to identity, we go deeper than the surface, and we bring you the truth, cinematic, visual, and unforgettable. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think Switzerland is the most perfect country in the world, or just the most controlled? Would you be willing to pay the price to live inside a system this precise? And if you visited Switzerland, did it feel flawless, or did you notice the cracks? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. let's talk about what perfection really means and whether any country can truly achieve it.